I've been to the hospital a couple times. Let's talk about it. So when I was born, I had some kidney problems, but we didn't actually know that for about 4 years. And I was in and out of hospital. I'd go in, they'd check me out, I'd seem fine, come out, be ill, go back in, do it all again in a month, and so on. I had treatment for that till I was like 15 or something. Anyway, I'm fine now. My kidneys are fine. I'm no stranger to hospitals. And to be honest, growing up in and out of the hospital kind of gave me this, I don't know, lack of fear, whereas other people have a phobia to it. So, me in the hospital, we're pretty chill. Although I'm only going to talk about myself, I've obviously been to the hospital for other reasons, like to see family, friends, have a random checkup, see the sports news. So the first story I want to tell is about my knee being dislocated. But before I tell you that story, I have to tell you about what happened when I was a kid, other than my kidney problems. So when I was younger, my mother was dressing me. I was basically a baby, and she had to put my arm through a dress hole. And my arm fell out of its socket. Now, she didn't know that at first. I didn't show any pain. I just sort of flopped it down and wandered off, did my own thing. But she noticed that I was floppy, acting weird, and when she touched my arm, I screamed in agony. So obviously she rushed me to the hospital. She was crying. She was terrified that the police were going to come and take me away. And the doctor said, "Oh, this is fine." I just went and just clicked my arm back in and I was fine. And from that day on, we noticed that my arms in general are a bit floppy. Well, they were when I was younger anyway. Ever held a kid by its wrists or hands and swing them around in a circle? Yeah, you couldn't do that with me because they would dislocate. I used to be able to actually dislocate my fingers sort of inwards. It's hard to explain. I might draw it out for you, but then again it might turn some of the more sensitive viewers. But I can't do that now, I guess, now that I've grown up and my muscles have grown. But anyway, I used to be a lot more flexible as a kid. So one day, over at least 5 years ago, I was in college and I was just walking around minding my own business, and then I fell over. Now, in that instant, I'm not really sure what happened. I felt like my knee clicked and then my leg just went under me. It's still hard to explain to this day, but even when it happened, I was like, what the heck just happened? And I tried getting up and bending my leg, and I couldn't bend my leg, so I sort of shuffled over to the wall, and someone I knew passed me and a couple other people, and they were like, "Hey, you okay?" I'm like, my leg doesn't work. I managed to get up and I went and gathered my things, called my mom and said, "Yo, I think I need to go to the hospital." I pretty much limped all the way to the car. We went to the hospital and they were like, "Yeah, your knee probably dislocated." Basically what happened is that my ligaments must have stretched and it just dislocated my knee for a moment, and the moment I fell over, it popped back. They did an x-ray, seemed fine. I was obviously bruised. They gave me a weird knee support thing. And of course, crutches. Everybody loves crutches. So while I was getting all this sorted, we were talking about how I had previously dislocated my arms and stuff when I was younger, and this has never happened before, other than that. So they said, "Oh, you might have EDS." And me and my mum were like, "What the hell is EDS?" I still don't know how to pronounce it. EDS is short for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Hold on, I'm going to look this up. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yeah. Basically, it's when you have it's hard to explain because it's kind of like a spectrum. Some people have the stretchiest skin in the world. Some people have, I wouldn't say it's brittle bone disease because I think that's a different thing, but maybe it's a subgenre, like movies. Anyway, so I might have EDS since I used to dislocate a lot and I still kind of get floppy. But we couldn't confirm it because they do this weird test thing where you stretch your finger or thumb backwards, and I couldn't do that, but given my history, it was still a possibility. A year or two later, I'm in my bedroom. All I did was lift my leg over to my bed and my knee snapped out of place. It was the most painful, weirdest thing I've ever experienced. I was grabbing at my leg, screaming for my mum. She ran in, and all she could hear was, my leg, oh my god, my leg, while I was just grabbing at my leg, and I was stuck in this really awkward position on my bed, and I wasn't against the wall or anything, so I had to support myself. And while we waited for the ambulance, we waited, and a little car with one guy came. He was like, oh yeah, I'm sure we can do this. No, we can't move her. We need to call another ambulance. So then we had to wait for another ambulance. So I was like stuck in the same position for 1 hour, feeling pain and in this weird position and having to hold myself up with my two little noodle arms. Anyway, they strapped me in this weird thing, but for the pain they gave me like gas and oxygen. I don't really know what that means, but don't do drugs, kids. But this stuff got me high. I was laughing, I was talking. I never talked so much in my life. I think those paramedics were like, maybe we shouldn't have given her that gas in it. Maybe we should just let her suffer in pain. But no, they were totally fine. And I was like, oh man, you're so beautiful. I love your beard and you're bald and oh, you're great. And that was to the one paramedic. And the other paramedic was driving the ambulance. I'm like, oh my god, you're a bad driver. And they put a blanket over me once I was in the ambulance. So I couldn't see my leg at this time. So sometime between going from the house, which by the way, they had to carry me down the stairs really awkwardly. Poor bears. Anyway, between the house, driving to the hospital and getting to the waiting room where my mother met me there with the blanket still over my leg, pulled the blanket off, one of the nurses who would check me, and my knee was back in place. So I didn't just think she was a crappy driver. Clearly it was jostly enough to click my knee back in place. I mean, by that time I was already high on drugs, but it was a nice relief knowing that my knee was back in. We had to wait in the waiting room, but it wasn't as serious now since the knee was back in place, but it obviously had to be treated. But I was still high off the gas and air, and they weren't giving it to me anymore, so I was basically high as a kite, telling my mother that I was a cocooned caterpillar ready to turn into a butterfly. She was laughing her head off, and I was like, man, do you think I'm bothering the other people? And she's like, you're fine, darling, you're fine. And I was just like, I'm gonna fly away. I can barely remember this. So stupid. So anyway, I come off the drugs. They treat my knee. They strap it up. They say, hey, be careful. Give me a bunch of exercises to do once I start healing and these weird elastic things. And boom, I'm fine. So yeah, I have weird knees. I've probably got a lot more stories to tell, but for now, we'll stick with that. See you in the next vid. Bye.